first I'd like to, thank everybody for taking the time out to understand a little more about, the architecture, the different architectures between traditional storage and HCI. They really both matter. Okay, everyone is working for this, and you'll see here that that's the grand kumbaya. That's what everybody wants to be able to happen. And the reality is that we can make things like this happen. The thing that we have to be cognizant of is it's not one widget or one device that is making all of these things work. It's not, yes, it looks like it's a lot of cloud here. Cloud is a component, and it's an understanding, and it's a piece of the puzzle. And that's what it becomes, is it becomes a puzzle. And then we have to ensure that we're leveraging the correct pieces of the puzzle. We're not just taking a big hammer and just banging the pieces to make sure that that piece is going to fit no matter what we use, because again, we've got a big hammer. We have to be gentle and understand this component is way more powerful when it's used in the right place for the right reasons. Okay. And then, there's one destination. So we're all looking for that big picture at the end. However, there's many different paths to be able to go down. Sometimes HCI is the big hammer, and it works easy and it works best, and it gives you all the things that you need out of it. Sometimes it's not, but you need to recognize where each one of those will be able to fit. And hopefully by the time we're done with this today, you'll have a better understanding of where to try and position one versus the other, because there are different pieces where there's some challenges with using HCI, or some challenges of using traditional storage, and it doesn't make one right, it doesn't make one better. Everybody's use cases is different, and we have to be mindful of the use cases, and we have to be mindful of what are these requirements and constraints and challenges that we're trying to meet as we're working our way through any one of the solutions, whether it's SMP trying to help you to get to these realizations, or whether it's you by yourself saying, what, this does make a lot of sense for me, or the other side of the house makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm really talking about two different pieces of, one's HCI and one is, I call it just traditional, and it doesn't matter what that traditional could be. So it could be just, whether it's block storage or file or scale out or scale up, there's many different things to look at when you're looking at traditional. I kind of lump them together a little bit, and I'll talk to each one of them a little bit. But for the most part, I just focused on one piece because it can be a lot to consume to be able to dig into the depths of each one of the, I'll say, pieces of the portfolios. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is why traditional storage arrays, and where do they make the most sense, and why do they make that sense? Yes, they're purpose built. Their only purpose is to make sure that you get the storage that you need. Okay, but they're also multi-purpose from a how are you connecting. So when I say storage, some things are block only, some are file only. So it gives you that capability to have both purpose built to be able to deliver multi-purpose storage. All right, so you do have that flexibility as I call out here. It may be one device or one highly available device. It could be a couple of them if you're looking at something like an Isilon type approach where you've got a scale out configuration. But you've got one device that is highly available with multi-controllers that are active, and all of the requirements that are basically table stakes today inside of a storage arena. But what they do is, I can get NFS, I can get SMB, I can get iSCSI, I can get fiber channel, I can, then the list continues to be able to give you the things that you're needing, no matter how you're looking to get it. And they're very scalable. And that, I don't care whether you start out really small in a very little configuration and you want to scale, and you scale up. It's very easy to do that. Again, you got to, I'll just look at something like Unity, where you've got a set of controllers, and your disks are just sitting on top of those controllers as you build up. So I can start out with 1 terabyte and go up to 1 petabyte, inside of that same portfolio. So it really starts to make a lot of sense, and you can scale very easily. And depending upon the configuration, you can scale in as little as 1 drive, which is very powerful in that capability. And then the other side of things, it's proven. Everything is tested against a storage array. That's that's been around the longest. So I don't care if Epic or whether, any one of the workloads that are out there, SAP or HANA or whatever, it's going to work on a traditional storage array. You don't have to worry, has this been validated on HCI yet? Because those are some questions that we do have when you look at the HCI stack. Where in traditional storage, you don't necessarily have those questions. Typically, everything has been validated against it. And, obviously HCI is getting further down that maturity path where a lot of things are being validated there, but not everything has, obviously. We joke, nobody's been fired for using traditional storage. There's truth to that because of the rigorous validation processes that are in place. So, I told you some of the good things about traditional storage in a general sense. Why not traditional storage? There's some complexities that are there. How am I handling my fiber? How is the networking being handled? How are all of those configurations together? What do the support matrices look like for each one of these different devices? Because those are things that matter, and they matter fast as soon as you try to make a change. We joke that Fiber Channel is the most stable architecture, and that's only because everybody's afraid to touch the fiber switches. That's the problem. That's the reality behind it. They're not making any changes, so it stays up and running without any issues. All right, and obviously we need a separate set of skills. When you change a storage array, there's a significant skill set that's associated with it that you have to understand to be able to make the Swiss Army knife work. All right, so I have to understand how do I do the configurations? How do I configure those LUNs? How am I provisioning them to how am I assigning them? How am I connecting to, how am I providing permissions behind my NFS? How am I, all of these little pieces and parts all matter in the grand scheme of things, because, the other common industry joke is everything works when security is not in play. Today's life, that's not reality any longer. You've got to have security baked into everything that we do. And to understand the security inside these storage arrays, obviously it takes that skill set. So I'm going to just talk through the DELL EMC, the Unity, just so you can have, just from a point of reference to be able to talk through here. So, they're really fast. All right, they have all flash. They've got NVMe. They've got whatever it may be. You've got those components to ensure that you've got the speed that's required. It's very rare that you're going to hear somebody say, "Oh, it wasn't. I couldn't make a storage array fast enough for me." It's modern architecture. So when you're looking at it, this is a container-driven. It's container-based with all of the most recent technologies, whether it's the Intel processors or NVMe or what type of memory it's using. All of these things it's the most modern pieces, and they're all pluggable. All right, so it's very rapid deployment model. So these are things that we can ship a box, and there's step-by-step guides to be able to stand it up in its most basic form that anybody can do it. So obviously when you've got skilled people that are doing these, it can happen very, very fast. Storage efficiencies. When you start to look at some of the storage efficiencies behind it, Dell will actually guarantee a 3-to-1 storage efficiency. So whenever it's sized, they will guarantee you a 3-to-1 storage efficiency, which that's, obviously there's cost savings that you have to be, that you need to not ignore associated with these. And it's unified, as I was alluding to before, whether it's block or file, and different protocols, different capabilities from that perspective, that they are often referred to as the Swiss Army knives of the storage portfolio, because they can do a lot. All right, and end of the day, you're now looking at things that are built for multi-cloud. You can flexibly connect your business to a multi-cloud world, leveraging things like Unity. One of the things is you've got Dell Technologies validated designs. So they're all pre-validated designs to ensure that the expected performance is going to be there. The expected functionality is going to be there, and it's very easy to be able to follow a recipe like that. So you can consume it in the cloud, whether it's the cloud storage services or the Unity Cloud Edition. You know, either one of those paths are very valid to be able to leverage inside of the cloud. You know, you can even do some things to, you know, leverage a managed service provider to get Unity to be able to run SRM and things in the cloud. Expand to the cloud. So this is where there's actually cloud tiering is built right inside the array. So that way there we can focus on the data that is the most important to have close and then archive out to the cloud. So that way there you, again, one of the places that the cloud does excel is, you know, cheap storage. So I can pin out to a cheaper storage that's sitting out there and then only pull storage down as required. Obviously there's some other design decisions that have to be there as far as networking and everything else, but you know, that at least the capability is there to be able to, for you to do that. And then some of the cloud, the data insight that they have there, and I will say that this is one of my favorite tools, I'll say, with Cloud IQ. Cloud IQ, you know, it helps you to reduce the risk with the proactive health scores and spot trouble and pinpoint deviations in a focused effort to be able to resolve any issues that much faster. And then it helps you plan ahead with capacity forecasting and anomaly detection, all, you know, and they look at things across not just your array, but all the arrays that are actually out there today that are being managed by Cloud IQ. So, you know, some of these features and functionalities are really nice to be able to add to your portfolio as you're looking to manage these environments. So it's a traditional storage arrays recap, all right? One of the challenges that you're looking at is that skill, okay? It does take some, it's going to take a little bit of a learning curve there to be able to get through this and to be able to capitalize on all of the features and functionalities that I was just talking about. You know, you're looking at those, you have to say, okay, there's going to be some pieces of the puzzle that are going to be required from staff to be able to capitalize on that. But not that it can't be done, but it's just not necessarily always the most operationally efficient way to be able to do things. And then when you start to look at, you know, the one of the biggest benefits behind it is the agility. All right, they're really flexible. They can really pin into basically anything that you need, from a capacity amount or the ability to add to it. You know, all of the things that are very typical inside of our day-to-day lives is something that you can do with the most flexibility that there is inside of a traditional storage array like that. And sometimes that's really important to people to be able to have that that flexibility. So now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and roll over to, you know, why hyper-converged architecture. You know, so why the HCI? So you can improve your efficiencies and you can lower operational costs inside of a HCI stack. All right, and the reason that is that these environments are very controlled. They have certain building blocks that are actually leveraged inside them. So when you know all the pieces of the puzzle, it's very easy to be predictable and know what needs to be done from, I'm just going to use an upgrade type perspective. All right, and lower operational costs, because skills are not something to take lightly, to be completely honest with you. You know, classes and head count and all of that, to try and understand where each one of these pieces actually fall is definitely something to weigh in on the conversation. So some of the things that it does bring as well is the agility. So you're getting that public cloud-like experience, but you're doing it inside your own data center. So you're getting whatever they're doing there kind of on premises for yourself. You don't have to worry about, again, what's a LUN? It doesn't even matter. So you do that whole process of creating a LUN, assigning a LUN to your virtual environment, to then turn around and creating your data stores and make sure it's replicated across all of the hosts. You know, all those processes go away, and it pulls the virtual machine to be the first class citizen here. Scalability. So you can start really small and you can scale really large. So I got to 60 plus nodes inside of one domain. To be able to provide that type of scale is significant. I will say that but starting small is very good as well. I can start with as little as 2 nodes, and I can start with I'll just say one disk group, or from 1 terabyte, and I can scale all the way up to again, scale from 1 terabyte to 1 petabyte. You can do inside of one cluster, and we have clients that do that today, to be completely honest. And then the simplicity, and I think that that's one of the places where HCI is really powerful. Is you look at the simplicity associated with it, and this comes to, I want to consume. I don't necessarily want to worry about keeping the lights on. I don't care about how it's going to be upgraded. I don't care about, as long as I know it's going to happen and I know it's going to happen efficiently and effectively. I don't really care how the buttons are pushed or who's pushing the buttons, to be completely honest with you. So, as I did from a traditional storage perspective, why not HCI? Where are the pitfalls that I have to be very cognizant of? And one of them absolutely is, is the locked into, whoever the manufacturer is of your HCI solution. So whether it's Dell VXRAIL, you got to go buy another Dell VXRAIL if that's the path that you choose to go down. If you want to expand, or you want to buy your disks, or whatever you want to do, that becomes a bit of a challenge at some points. And configuration requirements. Some of them are a little more constraining from that perspective, because to be able to handle those automated upgrades, you want to make sure that you understand what they are, what the configurations are. So reining in what the options are there is a requirement to make sure that they limit any of the outages that could be seen. And again, like I said, it's a brick-based architecture, so I have to build this one brick at a time as I'm starting to go. Sometimes we might be in an environment where my storage is growing 5x or 10x my compute. So it just doesn't scale out well in that perspective. If you're growing at the same rate, that's great. Or if you're growing close to the same rate, that's great. You can always pivot and adjust for that, but you're still back to the building block basis of I have to add a node to be able to scale. You have to be to be able to do, I'll say, scale in large quantity, because yes, you can do some growth inside the nodes, but from a big picture perspective, it's node by node. So I'll talk a little bit about the VXRAIL, as I already started to. You look, and it's really a turnkey experience. It's all about consuming. It's fully loaded, secure. All the software is there for you to be able to do whatever you need to do from a management and observation type perspective. The lifecycle manager, and this is something that is very important. And as I was alluding to a little bit before, it's all pre-tested, it's all validated and engineered. When you are deploying this package, so to speak, to your VXRAIL, it's not the first time it was deployed. It has been deployed before. Other people are running it. It's been, or it's been rigorously tested inside of Dell EMC to be able to make sure that we know all the components, we know the pieces, we know the versions of the software, and we know that everything that we need to be able to make sure that you're going to be on another safe version. You don't have to worry necessarily about, do I want to go to the latest version? Where are the bugs? Where are the this? Where are the that? These have all been validated to make sure that they are working. And what's nice is you don't necessarily even have to worry about doing the upgrade yourself. Like I said, inside of the VXRAIL, as long as you've got your support, they will literally do the upgrades for you. So you don't even have to do it. For me, I'm definitely a technologist, so I would want to be involved. But So I sit on a WebEx while they do my upgrades and move the workloads around. That's the design and the beauty of VMware under the covers. You know, they push the workloads around. They do all the upgrades. Everything's done. I get to go on my merry way. I don't have to worry about compatibility matrices or anything else or who's clicking the buttons. You know, it's something you can very easily turn over. And it's highly differentiated. And the reason that is because it's been jointly built between Dell and VMware, are constantly inputting into the solution to make sure that it keeps getting better and better and better. So inside some of these components, you're looking at, you know, flexible licensing, RESTful APIs, and it's platform innovation. It's not just a we're going to add a feature or a nugget here or there. It's looking big picture to make sure that everything is happening in that fashion. All right, and as I was talking, the one-click upgrades and the serviceability associated with it is really second to none inside the industry. When you look at one-click upgrades, these are seriously one-click upgrades. You get upgraded from Virtual Center all the way down the stack. It's not oh, here, can you upgrade Virtual Center for me so then I can do the ESX hosts? Everything is included inside that configuration, which there's not a lot of other people can say that. And then from highly differentiated, you know, you've got your operational transparency. You do have the smart fabric switches if you so choose to go down that path with the advanced analytics of which is VXRAIL's ACE and leveraging Log Insight to be able to provide some of those component pieces and parts across the whole experience. So from a hyper-converged architecture recap perspective, yes, it is locked in. You know, it is what it is exactly what, you know, I will say some technologists fear from a locked in or constrained configuration perspective. You know, that is something that is there. I will say that the easy button on the outside of that outweighs a lot of that when you stop saying that, you know, I want to be able to turn this knob, I want to be able to tweak that knob. You know, you focus on the easy button and just consume it and make yourself more impactful to the business versus trying to keep the lights on. So, you know, why requirements? And that, you know, I look this all the time. I'm like, what are the requirements? What's needed? I want to, my thought process is all about constraints, requirements. You know, those are the things that start to drive my thoughts and decisions as I'm looking through these things. And, you know, this comic starts to lay that out very well, you know, from what people are looking for to what they really want and how people are explaining things. So to be able to pull these things through, it really starts to make you say, I totally get where the requirements are really the important bit. So understanding what that workload is going to be and what the what the workload is and the requirements of the workload from, you know, I'll just say business continuity is one that, you know, historically has been lumped together a little bit with disaster recovery and backup. Obviously, with what we're dealing with right now, that is really not necessarily the case. So we have to be very cognizant of the DR, the business continuity, and the backup pieces of each portion of data that we're looking to talk about. So again, the prescriptive architectures, why is it important? Let's just take a little example here. So your workload requirements, a powerful engine to drive your workloads, self-service access for users, reuse existing resources. Obviously, that's one thing that, you know, we're always trying to do is see where we can leverage what you've already got. Easy operations, or easy for operations teams to manage. This, you know, is starting to sound like something that is very normal to all of you. And then different environments for admins and users. You know, obviously we don't want those commingling. So something RBAC, you know, this sounds like it'll work. You know, that one might work if you don't like the first one. You know, and that's you know, these are ticking each one of those boxes, but that's what ends up happening. Very similar to the way I just walked through that that cartoon. So in summary, you need to have a holistic view. Understand that each one of these are definitely is strong in one place and weaker in another. It's the strengths have to outweigh the weaknesses for what you need. So as I was just saying, you need to understand the solutions that you're trying to put in place, whether from both the strengths and weaknesses side of things, and understand that just because I have a traditional array today, that I have to continue going with a traditional array, or just because I'm using HCI in this portion of my business, do I have to use HCI in all of my business? They don't have to go that way. You have to make sure that it's meeting the proper needs. You have to be, like I said, mindful of the requirements, constraints, any of the risks associated, and the assumptions. Sometimes I make a lot of assumptions when I'm working with all of you, but I look to validate all of my assumptions because I know that can be a big challenge at times. The square peg should not always go into the round hole, no matter how big the hammer is. So, like I said, it all makes a difference, and everything has to be in the correct alignment for you. Some things, sometimes it's easier. HCI has really become I will say the big hammer right now, that it definitely fits in. Some places, some organizations have focused solely on, all I care about is having this here because I can meet, I'll just say 70% of the workloads can fit inside of an HCI solution. Friendly. You can get to 90% or whatever, but those additional ones aren't necessarily always the most friendly. And with that, I just, again, want to thank you for taking the time. And I do see that we have a few questions. I will read them. Can I share the presentation with attendees? Oh, Jennifer, thank you. I absolutely can. Are there any gotcha licensing issues, cores and sockets? From a it's licensed very much like vSphere. So whatever you're looking at from a vSphere perspective, you're going to follow that same licensing model. So yes, we have to be very mindful of sockets, and obviously VMware did just say that anything over 64 cores is going to require an additional license, but there's not anything that we can't necessarily get around. Any other questions? I know I'm bumping you right up to the 12 o'clock hour. I hope I hope everybody got at least something out of it, and I'd be glad to meet up with anybody out there to dive a little deeper into your environments or see which path actually works best for you.
Bob, there is one additional question, if I may.
Yep.
Does VXRAIL have capabilities to scale to the cloud at all? And if so, which clouds and which capabilities?
So yes, VXRAIL does have the capability to scale to the cloud. There's many variables here, and I will be completely honest, the vehicle that basically is doing that is VMware's hybrid cloud, Cloud Foundation. So VMware Cloud Foundation, so VCF is what you'll very frequently hear. And what you can do is, depending upon how you're doing it, is pin that out to those clouds. So you can go out to, there's a VMC in AWS that you can actually manage with it. You can also do the EMC on DELL EMC, so where they'll actually provide the hardware and it's subscription based for you to act, and that's actually all built on VXRAIL as well. Hope that answered the question. You're welcome.
I think it did. All right, and with that, I am going to thank everybody.